There are 104 legendary commanders in Rise of Kingdoms, and you only need 4 of them, and that is really good news if you are a brand new player just finding your way to season 3 or season of conquest, or if you are a free-to-play player who struggles to get their hands on legendary commander sculptures. So today I'm going to share with you guys a very important insight that I learned from my KVK that just ended, because this honestly blew my mind. Now I'm going to release a more in-depth video very soon covering the end of my KVK, and I'm going to go over all of the stats for all of my different commanders, but in this video we're going to hone in on just 4 commanders that did all of the heavy lifting for my entire account, and we'll also touch on a few commanders that are runners up but were shockingly far behind and frankly kind of disappointing. But before we jump in, of course, what's going on, guys? Cheers. As you guys know, I'm a sponsored partner created with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, consider dropping a thumbs up down below. That's what really helps the channel a ton, and subscribe if you don't want to miss future videos. Okay, let's jump right in here because this needs to be talked about. One of the biggest problems that Rise of Kingdoms has had for a while is that it's really hard for new players and free-to-play players to sort of catch up to the meta, right? There's always new commanders coming out, there's new systems, there's new KVKs and changes to the game, and there's all these things to keep track of. And so if you are new to the game and you know this game's been out for 7 years, you feel really far behind, right? Well, right now is unironically one of the best times to be a new player, returning player, and even a free-to-play player in some aspects. Trust me, I know it's very hard, okay? Not trying to pretend like it's easy, but it is undeniable that if you can get a majority of your kill points with fewer commanders, that's a win across the board. That is fewer commanders that you need to spend sculptures on, that's fewer commanders that you need to catch up on if you are a new or returning player, and that also means spending less resources in KVK because you're running fewer armies on the battlefield, or at least you have the luxury of choosing to run fewer armies if you find yourself in a position where you have less resources to spend. And so if you are a new player, it might be overwhelming seeing all these commanders and saying, oh my god, the meta's always changing, oh there's so many commanders to get, I need so many different things. Well, honestly, if you just watch this video and you just get the 4 commanders we talk about here, you will have made a majority of your progress catching up in the commander department, which is kind of insane to think about. Okay, so what are the 4 commanders that you must have in Rise of Kingdoms? Well, really there's only 2 actually, and then there's 2 commanders that support them. And for those that have been watching the channel over the past couple of months, you probably already know the answer to this, and that is Emperor Qin and Sun Tzu Prime. And I'm gonna be honest here, I am an infantry main, and so when I tell you that the best commander in the game is Emperor Qin, I really do mean that, because my account is built for infantry to be superior. I am supposed to get the best trades on my infantry marches no matter what. Okay, my gear is better on infantry than it is on my archers. My formation is arguably about the same, although I will say that archers just got wedged too, so they do have an advantage in this department. But infantry also have the newest commander, right? I mean, Sun Tzu Prime is newer than Emperor Qin, and so logic typically dictates that, you know, you would expect the latest and greatest to be the greatest, right? And I gotta say, I have to give it to Emperor Qin, right? I mean, if my gear on archers was as good as my infantry, I'm almost afraid to know how good this army would have done. And I am going to share specific kill point data in my video where I talk about the end of KVK, but what I do want to touch on here is the percentage of my kill points that was achieved by these 2 armies. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, quick little recap on my KVK. This matchmaking was rough for this KVK, to say the least. Okay, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. It was hard to even come up with a way with which that people would be agreeing to fight in this KVK at the very beginning. Okay, so matchmaking was totally scuffed for this KVK. I was just barely able to pull out 30 million kills in this KVK. Now, part of that had to do with me traveling back in March, part of that has to do with me running 2 YouTube channels now, part of that has to do with me being lazy, but I will say I was not confident that I would even hit 30 million in this KVK. All right, and looking at the data that I compiled this morning, 56% of my kill points came from 2 armies. Those 2 are my Sun Tzu Prime and my Emperor Qin. Let me share with you another interesting fact. Okay, 50% of my kill points came from Kingsland, and Kingsland is the only place where I ran 6 armies in the open field. Okay, and I will cover those 6 armies in my video covering all of my stats and data from this kvk, but I share with you all of this so that way you understand that, okay, half my kills came from Kingsland where I was running 6 armies, and still, with all of that being said, 56% of my kill points came from these 2 armies, which is insane. 2 out of 6 armies, that is 1/3 of my armies, gave me more than half of my kill points. So there is a huge disproportionate return on investment when we talk about running these armies versus everything else in the open field. Like, to be clear, if I had just run these 2 armies versus running the 4 other armies that I ran exclusively, I would have been better off running these 2 armies than the other 4 combined. That's insane. That is actually insane. Now, of course, it's important to have multiple armies on the field. The more armies on the field, the higher the probability that you're going to win the ball fight, and that's going to give you the odds for winning the kvk. So I'm not here to tell you that you don't need to run 5 armies or that you don't need to run 6 or 7 armies, but what I am here to tell you is that if you're a new player or a free-to-play player and you don't know where to begin and you feel behind, there's only 2 armies that you really need to focus on right now. Okay, now, of these 2 armies, which one was better? Well, like I said, I think Emperor Qin is clearly the best commander in the game, especially now that Wedge 2 is here. Okay, and the data supports that. Of course, my Emperor Qin March got 30.3% of my kills. Okay, so just think about that for a second. Nearly 1/3 of all the kill points that I got in this entire kvk came from this march alone. That is actually insane. Okay, my Sun Tzu Prime army got about 26% of my kill points. Okay, so very close. And I was experimenting with Sun Tzu Prime a little bit in this kvk, so it's not exactly apples to apples, because I was trying to see what the best 2 army lineup would be for infantry for me. Okay, as you guys know, I do run 2 infantry, 1 archer, 2 cavalry, and the debate for me was, do I run Sun Tzu Prime with William Wallace secondary, and then do I keep my Bai Chi with Liu Che, because that's just tried and true. I mean, it's a double smite damage AoE, it's kind of a match made in heaven, right? Or do I do the Sun Tzu Prime with Liu Che and then I run the Bai Chi with William Wallace, right? Those were my 2 preferred choices, because frankly I don't love the idea of running William Wallace with Liu Che. I think that march is noticeably worse than the other options, because first of all, William Wallace is the primary and his active skill is very bad. Okay, I mean, in relation to everybody else, let me just be abundantly clear here. Okay, compared to the other commanders we're talking about, this is by far the worst active skill, but you kind of have to run him primary because Liu Che's got the attack tree, which historically is okay, but it did recently get a little bit of a nerf, which kind of sucks, right? And so I just don't love that, right? I don't love it. And so I wasn't willing to run the William Wallace Liu Che. It's just almost obviously the worst choice, right? So now I'm not saying you shouldn't run it. I think the only time that you would run that is if you have one stellar set of infantry gear and one incredible formation set, and then your second one is really bad, right? Then okay, maybe you min max and you do the Sun Tzu with Bai Chi, and then you do the William Wallace with Liu Che. But for me, like, my second set of infantry stuff is still solid, right? I mean, like, this is good stuff here. Even my second formation here is like pretty good. Like, we have Toppler, we've got Fearsome, Eclipse, Smite, like it's solid stuff here. Okay, so I didn't want to write this off and say like, oh, this is my garbage set. Like, no, this is a good set. Okay, and so I didn't want to, you know, underutilize the value of that set. So for a while I was running Sun Tzu Prime with William Wallace and then Bai Chi with Liu Che, and then I flipped it around and I ran Sun Tzu Prime with Liu Che. And I will say, for me, the best 2 army lineup for infantry is Sun Tzu Prime primary with Liu Che secondary, and then Bai Chi primary with William Wallace secondary. Okay, I think this kind of is the best middle ground of all of the different choices that you had. Of course, if you're only running 1 infantry march, it's probably Sun Tzu Prime with Bai Chi, although I'm not even sure I would bet on that, honestly, because the synergy with Liu Che and Sun Tzu Prime is kind of insane. But all of that being said, okay, let me just, before I break down why I ran the armies that I ran and kind of how I ran them, let me tell you the 4 commanders that you need to catch up in Rise of Kingdoms right now. Okay, so obviously we've already covered 2. It's Sun Tzu and it's Emperor Qin. Okay, the other 2 commanders that you need depend on how many sculptures you have and where you're at with your account. I think for infantry, the safest bet is probably Bai Qi, right? And for the secondary for Emperor Qin, the safest bet is probably Zhuge Liang. That being said, if you already have Seong-Gye, then just leave it, right? Just keep that. Emperor Qin with Seong-Gye is super good, and frankly it typically will get you more kills than the Zhuge Liang, but the Zhuge Liang is a little bit more tanky and it has a very powerful debuff on the active skill, which I basically abused this KVK. I just wanted this to pop as often as possible so that way the rest of the armies that I have on the field perform even better, right? That's kind of how you have to think about it. You might be getting a little bit less kill points from the Emperor Qin March itself. In exchange for that though, the rest of your armies are a little bit more tanky, right? And so they're going to last in the field longer and they're going to get more kill points, and so ideally you're going to make up the difference there. And overall, Zhuge Liang is just a bit more of a well-rounded choice here for Emperor Qin, and he's got a really consistent rage engine here, whereas with Seong-Gye it is a % chance to get his rage engine with a cooldown. So that's kind of where I landed with that. Okay, so those are the 4 commanders. The 2 slam dunk obvious choices are Sun Tzu Prime and Emperor Qin, and then the last 2 depend on what you have. If you already have Seong-Gye, don't bother with Zhuge Liang yet. Okay, the other thing that I want to call out here is that we should be hearing about new archers any day now. I mean, I'm actually getting tons of comments and messages from you guys asking when's the new archers, we are overdue. Okay, I'm right there with you. This is taking longer than anybody expected, so this is very obviously going to be a longer release window, which is again great for free-to-play players, great for new players, because slowing down commander releases means you have more time to get universal commander sculptures to save up for the next commanders. Okay, so again, I know it feels bad that we're waiting so long, but the silver lining is that you've gotten more time to save gems for the wheel, more time to save universal sculptures for whatever that next archer is. Okay, and that kind of even makes me more bullish on Emperor Qin being the strongest commander in the game, because we don't even know what's coming next for archers, but like we know infantry aren't getting anything for a while, right? I mean, not until either the very end of this year or the beginning of next year, right? So it's, unless we see like, you know, a super good leadership commander come out at some point that's great for open field infantry, totally possible, right? Or like a KVK special commander that's maybe open field leadership, right? Like that, those are definitely options on the table, but we know guaranteed that archers have a new commander coming, right? So will that commander work really well with Emperor Qin? Who knows? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Emperor Qin's kit's a little bit unique, right? So it might not be perfect synergy, but either way, Emperor Qin is in a great spot right now, to the point where he necessarily doesn't even need a new commander. Really, the second archer march is what needs a new commander. So that's kind of how I'm feeling. So again, the final 2 commanders that you need after Emperor Qin and Sun Tzu Prime is either Bai Qi or Liu Che, depending on, you know, what you prefer. I think Liu Che obviously doesn't deal as much damage, but he's a little bit more well-rounded with a rage engine, which is nice. And then for archers, if you have Seong-Gye already, just keep that. You're good to go. You don't have to do anything else. Those are the 2. If you don't have Seong-Gye already, I think Zhuge Liang is probably a safer investment than Seong these days if you're already in the end game. If you're in the early game, obviously Seong-Gye is your only choice, and he's going to be really good for a long time. Okay, with all that out of the way, let's talk about why I ran the 2 army infantry lineup that I ran, because I think this might be a question that a lot of people have. Right now, the reason that I wanted the Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace to work so bad is because William Wallace is clearly the worst of these commanders by far, and being able to turn him into a sort of pseudo AoE commander is a really good thing, because William Wallace, like the downside of him is that he's single target damage, right? So Sun Tzu giving him the ability to be AoE is really nice. The problem with that logic, okay, is that this military sage effect works on all commanders that deal smite damage, not just the single target damage ones, right? So what that means is the true damage that William Wallace deals here as a result of the military sage effect is the same as the true damage Bai Qi deals off of his skill, because they have the same damage factor, 2400 for a 5 target AoE versus 2400 to a single target. Okay, kind of insane, really kind of insane. So it's not like, you know, if you swap your Sun Tzu Prime William Wallace for the Sun Tzu Prime Bai Chi, it's not like you're losing the true damage on the secondary. You're actually keeping the true damage on the secondary no matter who's there. Okay, so that being said, the true damage argument is kind of a wash, right? It's there no matter who the secondary is. So yes, it is the best case scenario for William Wallace, but is it the best case scenario for Sun Tzu Prime? The answer is no, right? And I think that again, there's like the argument that, you know, this is going to increase the active skill of Sun Tzu Prime by 40%, which is, yeah, that is true. That is definitely true. 10-second cooldown though is like the longest cooldown in the game. Like we don't actually see any longer cooldowns than that, right? So like you are not going to get this as much as you think you are. You're going to get this like every second or every third active skill cast, and even then it's only an 80% chance, right? So like putting all of your weight into this skill making up the difference is just not a great strategy. So unfortunately, right, like I said, I wanted William Wallace to be the play. I did, because I have been a William Wallace hater forever, and I wanted this to be like the match made in heaven. This is the golden boy. Like now we've gotten a great pair for William Wallace, and it's fine, right? Like it's a good commander pair, and Bai Chi Liu Che is still exceptionally good. Like let me just be clear, I got insane reports with this March as well, right? That being said though, flipping it around, I noticed that the Sun Tzu Prime with Liu Che is significantly better than the Sun Tzu Prime with William Wallace, and the Bai Chi with William Wallace is definitely worse than the Bai Chi Liu Che, but it was still solid. It was still usable. It was still effective in the field. Okay, so why is this, right? Well, the answer is that the sort of synergy Liu Che has with Sun Tzu Prime is super good. Okay, first of all, the march speed reduction here is actually kind of underrated. I mean, a 40% march speed reduction that is AoE to 5 targets is very good. It helps you stay connected with your Sun Tzu Prime so you can keep hitting him with 3000 damage factor. Okay, so you are like snaring them and you are just punishing them for that. Very good stuff here. Beyond that, okay, whenever you launch a basic attack, you have a 25% chance to deal extra smite damage, which means if you deal that on a turn where military sage is happening, you're also going to deal AoE true damage. Okay, now this can only happen 1 time per second, so there's a little bit of like competing overlaps there, but it's still something. So you actually deal more damage with this potentially than you would normally because of the military sage effect. And then on top of that, the expertise here gives you combo attacks which give you more rage. Okay, and the number one thing that you want on Sun Tzu Prime is more rage. And furthermore, the third skill of Sun Tzu Prime says you have a 50% chance to deal an instance of smite damage for every basic attack. You can trigger this once every 3 seconds. Okay, so the combo attacks on Liu Che will trigger this skill. So like there's just a little bit of extra bonuses you get by having that combo. Like the expertise really of Liu Che is just so good for Sun Tzu because his rage requirement is lower, and now you have another rage engine on top of the fact that you've got the Horn of Fury, and this smite damage on Liu Che is going to deal true damage sometimes with your Sun Tzu Prime. So I really like that 2-army lineup. I love the Sun Tzu Prime Liu Che. I think obviously if you do Sun Tzu Prime with Bai Chi, yes, he's going to hit a little bit harder here. You've got more attack points, which is nice. You still have ways to deal the extra smite damage procs, but you don't have a rage engine here really. I mean, 20% rage gain for 1 second is like, it's not nothing, but it's just not something that I even have to factor in, especially when you consider how much better the bonus attacks are here. So while you lose out on 150 damage factor plus the, you know, chance at dealing more, there's so much more to gain with Liu Che, I would say, even though his stats are slightly lower as well, right? You have less attack, but you have defense. You know, stat distribution on Bai Chi might be a little better as well. So I think it's up for debate which one is better, frankly. And honestly, I love the Liu Che secondary to the Sun Tzu Prime. That's just me. If you want all out damage and you're only running 1 infantry, you might do the Sun Tzu Prime Bai Chi. You might prefer that as your single army lineup, but yeah, I really like the Liu Che for me personally as somebody who runs 2 infantry marches. Okay, so that's kind of where I've landed with my 2-army lineup for infantry. And again, either way, the point of this video is to let you guys know that if you're a new player or a free-to-play player, a majority, which is like, again, I need to like kind of re-emphasize how insane it is that I'm saying that, a majority of my kill points came from 2 armies, right? So really that's a majority of what you even need in Rise of Kingdoms in 2026. Now, the other thing I mentioned earlier is some runner-ups that were a little bit disappointing. Okay, my 2nd infantry march got me more kills than my best cavalry march, which was my Gangnam Chan with my Achilles, wherever he is. Okay, okay, and that shocked me. That frankly should not have happened. I don't know what happened there. I think the difference between this KVK and last KVK is that this KVK I ran Gangnam-chan primary, whereas last KVK I ran Achilles primary. So maybe I underestimated, you know, the difference there. Obviously Gangnam-chan primary is more tanky, and in this KVK we were significantly stronger than our enemies, so that tankiness may have been a bit wasted. Maybe I should have gone all out for damage and done the Achilles primary. And just to be clear, for those of you that are new, the reason that you would prefer Achilles primary is because the active skill is a circular AoE, and there's a lot of times where you might cast your primary active skill, but you have to retreat before the secondary casts, and then you lose out, you know. So if Achilles is the secondary, you're missing out on a 5 target circular AoE, whereas if Gangnam-chan is the secondary, it's like, oh, it's 3001 target. It's not nothing, but it's definitely not nearly as good as the active skill on Achilles, right? So maybe I should have swapped them around, but I mean, really, like, if we look at the gear here, is this bad gear? Absolutely not. This is totally fine. I've got a special talent on most stuff here, and to be clear, I actually got the war drums only for Kingsland. Okay, now the other thing too is, should I have put a horn here? Yes. Should the war drums have been on my second cavalry march? Yes. But the war drums I wanted on my double combo march, and my second march was Arthur with William the first, right? And that is not a double combo march, so I just wanted to put it on whatever march would give me the most chances to proc war drums, which just so happened to be the Gangnam-chan with my Achilles. But for a majority of the KVK, I ran this with a horn here, so you know, I don't want you to think that that skews things. It does for sure, because half my kill points came from Kingsland, but I mean, even still, like, that one change is not going to cause it to get less kill points than my second infantry march. I'm kind of shocked here. Okay, so for me, I think right now the single best archer march is Arthur with Achilles. I think like it has to be, because I don't know, it's kind of annoying almost that cavalry just got 2 new commanders recently, and they're still in a spot where like they're struggling, right? Like how is that possible? It feels like right now the only way that you can really pop off with 2 cavalry marches is if you have either Hector, right, which I'm not going to invest in for open field. That just does not make any sense. He's a single target damage commander. He's leadership, absolutely not. Or if you have Attila from a long time ago, right? If you have Attila, fantastic, right? You can run that with Achilles, right? And it's fine. It's quite good, especially if your enemies are bad and they swarm it down. Okay, but again, should a regular player be investing in Attila in 2026? No, that's a horrible strategy. There is no guarantee of longevity there, which is just the worst place to spend your sculptures. Will you get value out of it? Sure, right? I mean, we're not expecting to see a new cav until probably September, October, so like you'll have a few months of benefit for sure, but it's just not worth it to me, right? Like there's just no, even like buying the daily special offer, like it's going to take so long to get there, it's just not worth it. So you know, for me, I'm surprised that cavalry are still kind of struggling here unless you have those 2 commanders. It's kind of annoying, honestly, as somebody who runs 2 cav marches, to the point where I think with this next upcoming archer, I will probably be building a second archer march with gear, right? I'll be building a second set of equipment for archers in the event that cavs just don't get it together with their next release, because it's kind of shocking, right? Again, not to say that cavs, you know, the Gangnam-chan with Achilles, great march still, right? Great march, but like it was noticeably worse than the infantry cavalry, despite having similar gear equivalent and very solid armaments. I mean, like this is not, nobody would argue this is bad at all, right? And the reason I bring this up, just to be clear, is not to trash cavalry. Again, I run 2 cav marches. I have chosen to go more all in on cavalry. This is my second cav gear, right? Like I am more all in on cavalry than I am in for archers, right? I have every incentive to be saying that cavs are the best or the second best troop type in the game, but the truth is that they're not, right? And it's noticeably worse unless you have those 2 commanders that I talked about and way better, I guess, way better gear than me. I don't even know how, like, do you need tier 5 everything to make cavs viable? Like what? I don't know what I'm missing here. Obviously 1 or 2 more special inscriptions would be nice, but like that's just not realistic for most players. Even for me, I just recently calculated how much I spent on Rise of Kingdoms last year, and most players do not spend that much, right? Now, many of you watching definitely spend way more than me, because I was actually surprised it was lower than I thought, but even still, this is a mobile game. If we come back to reality, most people are spending less than me on this game. Okay, so all that being said, I mention this because, you know, when we think about the big 3 right now, we think about Sun Tzu Prime, we think about Emperor Chen, and we think about Achilles, but the truth is that Achilles does not have a pair that like he frankly doesn't belong in that conversation yet. Okay, maybe the next calves will put him in that conversation, but if they do, it will probably be because that commander is really good. And again, I want to be very clear here. Achilles is phenomenal. Okay, he's phenomenal, but he's not Emperor Qin, he's not Sun Tzu Prime. That's all I'm trying to say here. Okay, these two commanders are in a league of their own. Achilles is merely excellent. Okay, which is like, I want to put it in perspective. This is an excellent commander amongst perfection. That's kind of like the problem with the current meta, is that these two commanders are just better, like categorically above everything else. So even when you have excellent commanders like Achilles and really great commanders like Arthur's kit is so good. I feel like people, because he's older, he like isn't talked about as much. His kit is so good, right? It just can't compete. Now, that being said, had I only run one cavalry march, Arthur with Achilles, perhaps I would have a totally different perspective here, but all I can share with you is my anecdotal experience, right? This is just what I had. This is what I ran. I don't think what I ran is absurdly bad. I think this is what a lot of people are running. Gangnam Chan with Achilles is like a very normal meta march that a lot of people are running, and it was noticeably worse than the best commanders that I have on my account right now. Okay, so that's just it is what it is. I will talk more about this in my video where I cover all the kill point breakdown for all the different armies. So if you guys don't want to miss that, subscribe to the channel, drop a thumbs up while you're down there. It really helps out the channel a ton, especially if you made it all the way to the end of this video. And let me know in the comment section below, do you agree with this consensus? Like, are these two commanders and these two armies the single best armies in the entire game by far, or do you think cavalry can compete there? And what are your thoughts on this? Right, like, I think this is a good thing. Frankly, I think it's very good that a majority of your kill points come from two armies, right? Because that just means free-to-play players don't need to run as many armies. Brand new players have fewer things that they need to catch up to the current meta. I think this is a good thing for the game in general, right? That being said, I might be wrong. You guys can let me know in the comment section below. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I'll talk to you guys again soon. Peace.